I am one of the advisors for ECSL and do just service learning consulting, so that's my involvement. But I also used to teach for one of the schools that's members of this organization. So I initially came to ECSL just because I was looking for professional development around service learning. And so we'll just take some time to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So then you have a sense going forward, what are teachers looking to glean from today's meeting. But the basic concept is that, inside your packet we gave you a little bit about kind of what service learning entails. And it might seem a little strange that we have it as the title is a dropout prevention strategy, but actually one of the great things about service learning is that it provides such meaningful engagement in curriculum that it kind of really boosts that intrinsic motivation for students. So, when you think about just as a teacher, you're looking first and foremost to build good learning skills for your students, the ones that are going to carry forward. And so that's kind of that first section that you see there and that I put up on the board. It's all of those good learning strategies that you're looking to build through your classroom curriculum. And a lot of why teachers gravitate towards service learning is because it's a very active learning format that helps students build these skills while they are they're engaged in something meaningful. So that really is the heart of service learning. It's looking for meaningful, deep connections to academics, but it's applying it to something that's more meaningful in the community. And so what service learning provides is a lot more of the structure to make those types of strong academic connections. The most important being, I think, for the reason that why we're here today, is the one that's in the middle, which is meaningful service. The two that we'll talk about today mostly is how to get towards a point of meaningful service and not just make it volunteering or community service, and also how to integrate more youth voice and choice into that process. So that's kind of the heart of what we'll talk a little bit about today, and what you can sort of look for when you're at your roundtables. Those are the two things that we're sort of looking to build, and so we usually will share the context of a methodology of service learning that was developed by one of our advisors. It's called the 5 Stages of Service Learning. And this is just a methodology, and more or less it just gives structure to the types of activities that you're doing in your classroom with your students to kind of make that service more than just about this action piece, more than just going out and serving, to make it more about the skill acquisition and the content that you're trying to connect it to in the classroom. And what we're going to focus mostly on today is the investigation stage. In my experience teaching, the investigation stage is where the heart of the curriculum is, because there you're, especially the youth voice piece, because there you're uncovering social issues instead of telling someone or assuming what a social issue is. Sometimes with community service, like one of my favorite stories that we kind of will tell as an example is at the school that I used to teach at, there was a food drive every Thanksgiving, which is a community service based. Everybody is asked to bring in, a few canned goods, and there's an assembly, and the kids walk through and they drop off their cans, and there probably is some conversation about it in the classroom, but it isn't truly directly connected to the curriculum. So some of the teachers decided to do an offshoot of that experience and say, this isn't really helping students see or do any sort of critical analysis of the types of issues that are going on in our community. So the 5th grade class, for example, decided to study it within social studies, and they talked about different customs, and that some of the things that the students were bringing in might not actually serve the Thanksgiving customs of a certain family. So they interviewed the food pantry director that they were donating the food to, and found out that actually the types of families that are coming did not necessarily need the kinds of food that were being donated at Thanksgiving. And they also found out that they didn't really need anything at Thanksgiving because there was already plenty of food being donated at Thanksgiving, that there were certain cultural items that would be more beneficial to donate in May, at the edge of that kind of food hunger issue for a lot of children. So they completely revamped and redesigned it and made it in a food drive in May instead. So that's just one example. And the third grade class was studying Los Angeles monuments and all about Los Angeles history. And they expanded on their curriculum and interviewed someone from a nearby shelter who alerted them that actually instead of food we would much prefer socks. And so the third grade designed an advocacy campaign around all of the students that are currently homeless in Los Angeles, and they had the school do a sock drive and bring in as many socks as there were students who were homeless at the most recent survey. And then they did a display, like an advocacy display. They put the socks all over the field and kind of had sort of like a public service announcement about. So those are a few examples of how community service can become service learning through a curriculum connection. So when teachers are coming here looking for ideas, a lot of times they're looking for different entry points. One of them might be to take an existing program and transform it into service learning. That's kind of a little bit like I shared with you just now, some examples. But also they're looking to build it into their curriculum or into a unit or theme that they might already be doing. So for that third grade class, they were already studying Los Angeles, so it really fit in nicely with what they were doing in social studies. And then you also might want to start with a student identified need. Sometimes things come up on campus that spark sort of an investigation process of how to support that student or that family. And then lastly, there might be inception from a community identified need. A lot of times examples of that might be something like disaster preparedness or, a fire in the area or a flood or something along those lines as an example of something that may come up that teachers then want to have as a launching point right then. When teachers are coming, they're looking for ways to make those inroads, not just to an idea for service, but how is it going to connect to my curriculum? Because that is kind of the true heart of service learning. So these are a few planning tools that are examples that we have used in the past to kind of begin that process. And we included it here for you. And why we thought that might be helpful is because this might be something that you can kind of switch your lens and think from the place of a teacher of, okay, so based on my social issue that I'm coming and I'm representing, my community need, what are some of the connecting points that a teacher might be looking to make if they're reaching out to you and connecting with you about, interested in coming and learning more about the community need and more about how they can support your work. And so one is through the different avenues, the different curriculum avenues. And then the other might be through just all of the stages of service learning. And so that's here for you on this. They might be thinking about, their essential question of, how do humans affect the ocean environment or something along those lines. And then they're looking at, how are we going to engage in service beyond just the action stage? And the action stages that we usually speak about are in 4. So one is providing some sort of a direct action where you're face-to-face interacting with an organization or maybe the clients of an organization. The next kind of service that you would be able to talk about with different educators would be indirect service. So that's providing some sort of a benefit to the organization without necessarily being on site. And then another forum is advocacy, which is public service announcements or speaking out on behalf of your clients or your organization for whatever you're experiencing, and then research. And that is engaging in sort of more information and uncovering more about the community need, whether it's water quality testing or surveying clients or whatever it might be. And so built within that is now a little bit of opportunity for you to interact with the educator and say, well, these are the parameters that we have. Because of course they're coming in and thinking about, what are the learning opportunities built into the service here? So they're thinking about, what kind of media can I connect to that's going to help us learn about the issue? What kind of interviewing skills can my teachers practice when they're coming, or can my students practice if they're coming to engage you in service? Or they might be thinking about other skills that they need to acquire, whether it's speaking and listening skills or something along those lines. So that's what they're coming in thinking about. But of course, and like you need to as well, you guys are thinking about the parameters for service. What's going to make it worthwhile for me to be hosting students? And what sort of time frame do we have for it, and what sort of skills do we want students to bring to the table for us and to support and to use so that we can feel supported in our community need. And so that's where the interplay can be. Yeah, sure.
You mean we're partly here ultimately through the teachers to recruit students to our organizations? That was not something.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. That could be like a future stage if you connect with a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, that is that. But yeah, to clarify a little bit, it's more about, this is a launching point for creating hopefully some sustainable relationships, because ideally you guys are able to create mutually beneficial things. And so you as an organization have needs, and I've sat at roundtables before with organizations where they've said, can we tell you some stories about what we've experienced with service? A parent writing a three paragraph email about, why didn't you let my students do blah, 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 or students coming in and not being engaged or not knowing much at all about the need that they're there to address. So we as educators are looking to move beyond that model of, okay, our kids need community service hours. And you hopefully are looking for educator allies that can support your work with students that are actually going to provide you a service in some meaningful way. And so the interplay there is that if you're interacting with teachers, like knowing where they're coming from. Yeah, so that's basically where the relationship starts. And so ideally, we're here to kind of talk a little bit about how your organizational goals can fit with the learning goals that we have today. And we wanted to give you a little bit of space to know that we are also advocates for you, because we are trying to promote the idea that when students walk through the doors, or when students are engaging with your organizations, that they are more prepared, and that they're more aware of the issues that you're dealing with, so that they can offer solutions and be a part of the conversation that are much more meaningful. And so what I'd love to do is have it be a little bit of a conversation now until we get started, to hear if you'd like to share an idea, or not idea, more of maybe a story of ways that you've interacted with students that has either been positive or maybe challenging, so that we can know different ways that we can advocate for you going forward, and just to kind of hear from each other about what is that connection between organizations and educators, and how we can support you guys.